Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Prog Report podcast. We are doing another Prog Report panel episode and returning a panel here, I guess we'll call it. We got Jordan Blum here back again. Hey, Jordan, good to see you.
You too. Thanks for having me back.
And Michael from the famed Notes Reviews website and podcast.
Oh, thank
And
you.
these guys review records like crazy all the time. And I like having them on for certain artists that I know we all share an affinity for and that they bring a lot of expertise for. And the one we're going to talk about today is, of course, Devin Townsend and his new record, Lightwork, which comes out November 4th. For some people, you may have seen it was October 28th, but did get delayed a week, so it comes out November 4th. We're recording this the day after Halloween, so happy late Halloween for you guys. And yeah, so I thought it would be good to talk about this record. I think of the big albums from this year, from 22, this is right up there, possibly the biggest or among them. And of course, Devin, as he always does, tries to do something different, and again has flipped it a little bit on us, not insanely. And I want to get into that because I think there's maybe this sentiment that maybe he's put out there that he's completely done something different, and I'm not sure I agree completely with that, although I see what he's talking about. But we've all heard the record. I'll let you guys give your thoughts a little bit, and then we can just discuss it. Jordan, let's start with you. When you first heard it, well, let me preface this. Let's say, talk about what your expectation was, and then when you heard it, how you received it.
Yeah. So, I mean, even in my review, I kind of start with this that like after Empath, which I remember you and I were like talking about, like I remember you heard it before I did, and you were kind of like telling me like this is major, and I agree. I think Empath I think is arguably like a career retrospective. It's a substantial work. So my expectations weren't so much that he would match that, but Devin Townsend, as everyone knows, is like one of my favorite artists ever. He's maybe the only artist today I would call a genius. So my expectations are always high. Um, and listening to it, it took, as with everything, it takes a while to like appreciate. And I think what I've come down to with it, and this is going to sound negative, but I don't mean it to, because I think it's still fantastic. I think it's incredible. I think it gets better as you hear it. But my immediate thought after the first listen was, this is like Sky Blue and Transcendence in that it's a collection of really good songs, but it's not essential. It's like, to me, it's like kind of like a passing album between two bigger works, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But every time I hear it, I like it more. I'm definitely giving it a really high review. I mean, it's Devin. I I don't think it's this revolutionary thing. I think it is very much familiar ground, but again, he does it one of a kind. So even if it's something I feel like I've heard before, it's still great. But that's my immediate kind of consensus is like, this is like one of those albums that's a collection of songs, but it's not one of his like essential, substantial statements to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Mike, what about you?
I have pretty much the exact same sentiment, actually. So as you were speaking, I'm like, well, what am I going to talk about now? But no, I think you hit it right on the head in terms of like, it's very similar to Sky Blue when you look at his entire discography, because he was doing something very different with the previous album. The previous album from Sky Blue was Epic Cloud, which was extremely different than the four albums we got with the original Devin Townsend project. It came off of Deconstruction and Ghost, which in my mind are two of his biggest masterpieces.
Mhm.
And then he shifted focus entirely to this Epic Cloud, which, love it or hate it, it is a different expression of Devin's, which had like this crystal clear focus. So when he came to Sky Blue, I agree entirely. It's basically a collection of tracks rather than like a fully realized album. And I think the same can be said here, where Empath, again, much like coming off of the heels of the Devin Townsend project, was this big statement, this big opus of his. And so coming into this, I'm getting that same kind of vibe that I got with Sky Blue. And I think a lot of that is a response to the last 2 years. It's a response to the albums that he had put out previously, a bunch of his own kind of like dev lab, very ambient guitar sounds that he had put out just like on YouTube and whatnot, and then the Puzzle and Snuggles. all of these albums are very cathartic for him, and I feel like this is those albums but put to lyrics and then put music towards it. So again, it's a very cathartic outpour. It's him reflecting. He's kind of like where he is in his life now. And I don't know, it doesn't quite, for me at least, after so many listens, it doesn't have that same kind of punch that I was hoping for. But I don't know. I'm left just a bit lukewarm on this album, especially where he is currently. So that's my own take.
I'm of two minds on it a little bit. One is that just in a vacuum, not taking into all the considerations, his reasoning behind it, and all of that kind of stuff. I like it. I enjoyed the songs. They're memorable. I find that I've gone back and listened to at least half of them repeatedly. You know, if I'm in the mood for not knowing what to listen to, a song like Call of the Void fits the bill perfectly. It's like sing along. The production's great. There's enough kind of heavy guitars in there to keep it kind of rock, and I like it. Just sort of based about on that. I don't know how long that'll stay, but you know what I mean. But for the time being, I find it enjoyable, sort of on a plain kind of view. Um, my other view on it though is dissecting all the other stuff, and sometimes it's hard for me to put myself in an artist's head and all their sort of intellectualisms behind this and that and whatever. And so you sort of, I think he's the one of the few artists where you really buy into his reasoning for why he does what he does. It's an amazing accomplishment that he can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of artists sort of, when they try to make that sincere record or that epic record, or like you don't buy it. You feel like it's a put on, and there's many bands over many decades that have put out that type of album. And I think he gets away with it always being, yeah, I can see him wanting to do that. Okay, we'll buy in. I mean, his fan base just never shits on anything he ever does, and it's amazing. It's great. So
Mm-hmm.
so I'll give him that. But the other side of it is when artists like him that are eclectic and can do so many things try to write this more streamlined album and try to make it more, I don't know, for lack of a better word, commercial, let's say. Um, I just don't think they're able to do it like they think they can do it. And I
Yeah,
don't.
I
I'm not
want.
saying that's a bad thing. I think it just proves that
Mhm.
they're just above that to me. Like when
Yeah,
Steven Wilson tries to write a pop hit, like you don't do that well. So just stop. Like you don't.
yeah,
It's not your thing. And there's
yeah.
no harm in that. It's just not your thing. So
Hmm.
I sort of feel like half of this new album is still really intricate and complicated and bonkers and weird.
Hmm.
Sort of the back half of the record, from Dimensions to Heavy. I forget the name. The Heavy something.
Heavy burden, I
Heavy
think.
Heavy
Burden.
burden.
Heavy Burden's
Yeah.
like a ridiculous song. It's completely weird.
Hmm.
And then from that to Vacation, which completely is something an artist like him wouldn't do, and so that's
Hmm.
not. It's all really good, and like I said, I like it, but I don't think it's this commercial hit type of album. I'm not sure if that was his end game, but you know what I'm saying? I just don't know that it's. I still think it's for his audience. I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to jump off that point because this is one of the first times he brought in a producer to help him out
Yeah.
with a lot of these tracks. And I don't know if that was quite like I understand why he did it, but I don't know if that was the right move. Kind of like what you were saying. Like I don't think Devin Townsend should be streamlined in that sense. I think you should let Devin be Devin in all ways, shapes, and forms. Because a producer is supposed to, and I don't want to put all the burden on the producer in terms of I forget his name, but um
Garth Richardson, I think.
that's it. Yeah, Girth. I just felt like he was listening to it and he was constraining Devin in terms of being weird. And he's like, no, let's bring this back. Let's make it a little bit more accessible. Let's make it a little bit more streamlined. When I don't know if that was quite the right move. Like he's done songs like Vacation with a couple songs from Kai, like Lady Helen or Helen like that or something along those lines. So he's done these kinds of tracks before, but I don't know. It was almost as though he put the spotlight on the wrong aspects instead of like, I don't know, digging really deep into some of those really juicy parts of, you had mentioned Heavy Burden, but I would even say like Equinox or Dimensions, and like playing with that weirdness to really bring them up into the fold rather than quieting them down and pushing them over to the
Yeah, I mean,
side.
I
Because
think
they're,
that
you
the
know,
producer aspect keeps songs like Moon People and Lightworker, like the first
hmm
few of the album, which I think are really strong, keeps them from adding in that extra 1 or 2 minutes of weirdness that he might have done. And I
yeah,
think that would probably have appealed to us a lot. Like, okay, we've heard this first 4 minutes, we really dig it. Now, where's the crazy? And the crazy doesn't kind of come in those first few songs. But
Yeah.
I think he's trying something there. And again, that's where I go back to like I give him that like sort of
hmm
because you know where he's coming from, where he's trying it. So it's sort of a sort of a weird.
yeah, it's a double-edged sword,
Yeah,
right? Like you want him to
exactly.
try new things, but when he tries new things and they don't appeal, you're like, well, oh
Yeah.
well.
I think like because I obviously like I didn't write in the review. I read the press release and all, and like I saw that it wasn't trying to be this epic statement. It was like just songs simpler. Um, but I would say that arguably to me like his most commercial album maybe is Accelerated Evolution because that came between Teria and Synkestra, two albums that I think are bigger statements, and then you have a
Yeah.
collection of songs. But even that is like to me it's way more diverse because I feel like this album you can kind of shift the songs into one of two like categories, and they all have their like idiosyncrasies and all. But more or less, I think you're getting like one of two kinds of songs here.
Mhm.
So even like Accelerated Evolution, which I think is like way is to me like the most kind of attempt to be accessible and songy, is still way more distinct and just weird and characteristic. And
Mhm.
I don't know. Again, I tend to make comparisons to things that maybe aren't intentional or not. But every time I listen to Dimensions, I think, are you referencing Ziltoidia Attacks from Ziltoid? And then with the production, are you referencing Praise the Lower from Deconstruction? Because it goes into this like industrial tapping that is like right
Mhm.
from that. So I wonder if it's intentional like references or if I'm just reading into it too much.
I doubt. Yeah, I don't know if there's I don't think he is that type of artist that is going backwards to
Yeah,
that regard. Maybe it's just
just
sort
can't
of
help but hear it.
it's in his it's in his DNA. But
Yeah, DNA. Yeah.
um, yeah, again, I like that there's a song like Dimensions on the album, but I'm not. I think that's a weird fit among all the stuff that comes before it. I almost wonder if the
hmm
sequencing of the album was different, if it would have changed
Yeah,
the feel of it. Because I feel like the first half is very, at least definitely the first four songs are
hmm
the four most commercial, straightforward songs on the album. They're all kind of in a similar tempo and feel. And then with Heartbreaker, that's when things start to get weird and a bit more interesting. And maybe if you mixed
hmm
it up, you know,
yeah.
and
hmm
made it, opened with Dimensions, and the second track is, Moon People, and the third track is Children of God. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just making it
hmm
up, but
Yeah,
maybe that sort of changes how you feel about it.
I also wonder because I haven't heard the companion album to this,
Yeah.
Nightworks, and I wonder how the perspective of this album will change in the context of Nightworks, because I know that they're supposed to be like mirror albums to one another. Um, so I'm very interested to listen to that and then reevaluate this album to see if my opinion has changed.
Yeah, I mean that's also if you see a lot of the interview bits that have come out that he's put out, he's talked about all of that, and those are all on
hmm
YouTube and everything that you can watch. But um, he talks about that he just sort of vomits ideas out, and then this time instead of him sifting through all of them, the producer picked the ones and said, "Okay, let's work on these." And that's kind of how they did. And then because he's good at recording and finishing stuff on his own, those other ones were just already good enough done tracks that he
Oh,
puts. And I think it's really cool that an artist like that will do that because they may not be fully fleshed, finished, or even good. Who you don't know, but
hmm
he's letting you sort of hear it and decide for yourself. And there's a different version of Children of God on there that is weirder supposedly. So
Yeah. Yeah, I do wonder if it's going to be very similar to how Epic Louder I ended up liking a lot more than Epic Loud.
That's
Right.
what I was
And
gonna say is like
Empath had some
Yeah.
other material.
Yeah,
He tends
exactly.
to do
Yeah.
that.
a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean, Empath for me was and still is one of my favorite albums of the last decade, and
Yeah.
it really impressed me because
Mhm.
he's an artist that I wasn't as familiar with as you guys with every single diversion
It's a
and everything
task.
that he's
Yeah.
ever done. It's a lot, but that album really sort of struck me. It checked all the boxes on everything that he does well. I thought to perfection. Um, but I will say that the other thing that sells this album for me again is just, and he's I think one of the best at this is just making albums that sound good.
Mm.
And the production is a really important player in this, I think.
Mm.
Everything sounds massive and big, and you hear everything, and the mixing is impeccable.
Mhm.
And the guitar sound is always great. So
Mhm.
I think that, you can't help but love a chorus like that in Lightworker, which is just
Mhm.
awesome. I mean, it's just great when it comes in, and so I don't know. I think it works.
I think sometimes the production like s- almost saves the chord like a songier song. Like the production is so powerful with the vocal layers and the backing like
Yeah.
harmonies. It's like if you strip
Mhm.
this down, it wouldn't be as impactful. And that's I mean that's true for like all music, but it's like the
Yeah.
I wonder.
forcefulness of it
I don't know. I don't know.
I
does
wonder.
some
Yeah,
I
of the
I
think
thing.
some of those songs could work if it was just him doing acoustic. I think,
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say though, I feel like some of the mixing on here, and this was my only small asterisk criticism of Empath, was that some of the guest features are kind of lost in the mix because he
Mm.
has so many other vocalists that are helping him out on this album. But if I went in here not knowing that, I would have left also not knowing that. Which is a
yeah,
shame because there's some of my favorite singers of all time on here, like Anna von Hirschenberger is on, or I always trip over her last name, but Annika is on here.
you're right.
I believe Chi, that was helping him out with Casualties of Cool and on the
Yeah, and she's in his band. Yeah,
yeah, she's on here, but you don't hear them, unfortunately. And
that may
so
be
I wonder,
intentional. I don't know. The way they're blended in, so you don't hear.
mhm,
So they don't
yeah,
stand out
maybe it's
uniquely.
like that wall of sound, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
wonder maybe if they had stripped that down a little bit, if it would sound any better. It's hard to say. It's a parallel universe.
yeah. It would be interesting to hear him do something that is maybe less produced. Although I'm
Hmm.
a fan of this type of production, I generally
Same.
like that more than the alternative. But
Yeah.
I wonder how he would sound if it was just a little more raw and less glossy. That'd be
Well,
interesting.
I was going to say you should check out Casualties of Cool because that's
No,
essentially the
I have
album.
that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had but that's more. I feel like that's a country record
Yeah,
almost.
it's country rock for
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
it's great.
but a lot of good. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Again,
Yeah.
for him to do that, I thought
Hmm.
was brilliant.
Yeah.
And a really cool left turn. So I always I'm interested in seeing what he does. I think he's really talented, and
Hmm.
once he finds a direction, goes into it full force, like it's something he needs to do out of his soul, you know.
Hmm.
I would
So I
love to
think
do
it.
like because I never like tracing his discography. It's hard to put into words, but I'm sure you'll know what I mean. Like just tracing his evolution of like spiritual messaging and like introspection. Because I would say like post Ziltoid, like starting with Key and that
Yeah.
he gets into much more of like the like existential. Like even here he's like I forget exactly what it is, but like the worst thing you can do is freak out. Like he's got these
Yeah.
messages to his that he never. I don't know. I feel like he did as much before Ziltoid. And there's
Hmm.
like in reading his biography, there's a whole level to his music of just like philosophy and spirituality and just that I think is easy to miss beneath all the other great stuff. There's so much to,
Hmm.
and again, he does that here. There's so many inspirational, like simple but like very profound, just sentiment.
That is the
Yeah.
concept of the record, not in terms of conceptually like some of his previous stuff, like a Ziltoid or something like that, but the concept of this album is ideas of healing and
Yeah,
recovering from the
Hmm.
chaotic times the last few years and having something like the lighthouse to guide you through that or something that
Yeah.
is the concept behind it. So and maybe that is what people get out of it. I
Mhm.
don't know. What else are you guys looking forward to the last couple of months? Are there any other releases that you're waiting for, or is there anything coming?
There's one that I don't know if you get promos, you forget what the release dates are, but there's one by a band called Globus
Hmm.
called Cinemateca. I've never heard of them. I swear to God,
Yeah, I don't know them.
on it. But to me, it's a combination of like Muse, Dirt Poor Robins, um, a band that I don't think anybody's ever heard of called Never Ending White Lights. They're fantastic. And it's cinematic, like art, rock, pop. So it's something like super original, but the blending of it is really interesting. It's really impressing me.
I should
Oh.
ask you about the new Riverside single, if you guys heard it and what you guys think.
I'm going in blind. I
Yeah, I haven't
do
heard of it.
don't.
Really?
Yeah, I've spoiled myself way too often, and it's lessened my enjoyment of albums
Do you generally
overall.
do that?
So
Do you wait for really? Man, that
yeah,
is
I
good
do my best
discipline.
not to listen to any of the promo. I know I'm weird. That's just how I am, though.
That's really good
I
discipline.
haven't heard it yet either. But
Really?
I remember not like whatever the first single was for Wasteland. I remember not liking it, and it kind of lessened my anticipation for it. But then I grew to like Wasteland a lot more than I initially did.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure it's going to be great because they haven't found me yet, even though I
Yeah.
think one some are better than others.
Yeah. For what
Yeah,
it's
and
worth, I think the new song's great. So I'll leave that there
amazing.
for you guys. But with some bands I do try and I can't not hear it, but I'll try to only listen to it a couple of times and then just put it away because I don't
Mhm.
like getting sick of something before the
Yeah,
album comes out.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then you're just skipping the singles as you're listening to it. Yeah, that is a
Hmm.
problem. Well, cool,
yeah,
guys. Yeah, I think this is good. I mean, I think we mostly agree on the album.
Hmm.
We all like it. We're all not sure if it's his greatest album, but it's certainly really good. And I think it's another home run from him personally.
Yeah. I say that it's another Devin Townsend album. So if you're a fan, you're going to really enjoy it. And
Yeah,
I don't know if this will sway anybody that's not a fan of theirs.
that's fair. Yeah,
yeah.
there
I
might
pretty
be a
much
few
agree.
songs that if you thought of him as someone who just yells at you all the time, um, there are songs on here you can listen to. Actually, probably
Oh,
most of it.
absolutely. I was
So,
going to say this is
so
probably the easiest in for a lot of people,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. This may be an album for you to get into to him if you haven't. That might be the way to look at it. But I do think fans will like this record for what it is. If you're fans, it won't be too surprising. I don't think.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Just a few less,
Yeah.
double bass moments or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, cool. We'll talk again soon. If I don't see you guys again on here before the new year, I don't think there's anything coming up. We'll see you in 2023.
That
Sounds
sounds
good.
great.
Cool.
All right, cool. Have a good one.
So
Thanks.